So I woke up this morning and I was thinking, I just had this burning need to make a video. This is now, I don't know, 12 hours later, and my mind is not super fresh, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about this topic. And I don't have notes. There's a lot of things that I would like to reference, but I'm not going to do it on this video. I'm just basically shooting from the hip, because I feel like it's okay to do that on this, because some of the information is very difficult to even present piece by piece. It's an entire mesh, and things that I might have read in March or April. I don't even have that book, like where I took notes. I was reading, I think, Golden Lads or something about the Bacon brothers. And, there were a few things about that caught my attention, but I don't have all those notes. I don't have any notes right now. But, so, I've spent the last probably week totally okay with the De Vere thing. Like, I've been listening to a lot of Oxfordian things, even though at times I just dismissed it. But my final or where I'm at right now with Oxford is that he may well have had something to do with Shakespeare to some extent, but I feel like the arguments that the real Oxfordians are making are that, he knew Latin and he traveled and he was a nobleman. I mean, and there's some ciphers that I don't pay too much attention to the ciphers, even the Baconian ones. I mean, I guess I'm a Baconian for sure. I am, I guess. But I don't rule out that De Vere might have had something to do with it. But for me, the problem with the Oxfordians is that they don't even, I've never seen a single, well, maybe there are some people that think it was a team effort, and maybe they think Bacon was involved to some extent. But generally, they don't stress that. They're not going out of their way to say, like, only Bacon could have put this certain stamp on it, on the oeuvre, which I 100% believe, I guess. I don't even like to say believe, but because at some point you have to go on a certain amount of instinct, and you have to be willing to take a certain risk. And the biggest risk for me is the thing that, for me, the whole like linchpin of this, that if I look at Shakespeare from the vantage, the perspective of Bacon as the son of Elizabeth, it really does make a lot of sense. I mean, to me, that is the most plausible. I mean, it's a stretch, but once you're willing to look at it from that lens, pretty much everything else makes sense. But so then to bring up Marlowe, the thing about Marlowe is there's that kind of lack of overlap between Shakespeare and Marlowe. So it's like, well, what was this Shakespeare guy, doing for like the entirety of the 80s? He was an actor. Like, to me, that's a funny, like, it's almost like a joke, because Bacon himself could have been the actor, He might have been acting as Marlowe, So once I was reading Alfred Dodd, some of the Alfred Dodd stuff. I didn't even have I got one of his books, but it wasn't the definitive, the one that really goes into like Bacon was absolutely the son of Elizabeth. I don't have that. I haven't seen that even. I haven't even looked at that stuff online in probably 3 years. But it planted the seed. It gave me the sense that it was certainly not impossible that would have happened. I mean, the reason to keep that a secret is clearly with the succession and issues, like it would make sense to hide that. There was too much afoot. And again, I don't have, this is all just kind of, I'm like talking to you in a bar or something, like, yeah, man, like, but you would probably, it would be a very good option to keep that a secret. So even the fact that Bacon's mother is Anne Bacon and Nicholas Bacon, he were like, up there. I don't know, what was Nicholas Bacon? I don't know, the Lord Master. I don't know, whatever his, I don't even, right now I just can't, I don't have the recall to, I know I probably sound like an idiot, but I've thought about this a lot. I just don't have instant recall. That's not really my strong point. But I'm willing to go with there's to some extent, and like Occam's razor, the intensity, the fire, and the whole drama of the situation. Like if you're turning if you're winding up a spring or something, you really have to think that if it's true that Bacon's the son of Elizabeth and he wasn't just a lawyer, and a philosopher who didn't even really write anything until, I don't know if he was, if any of his writings are pre 1600, but as far as I know, like the Nova Morganum and what the other one, Great Instauration, those sort of philosophical, scientific writings are I didn't think they came out until 1600. So the idea that a guy that wrote the the Bacon essays are, I mean, some of that is pretty dense going. It's pretty like the one on dissimulation or whatever. Like I mean, that is the level of understanding. Like to assume that Bacon wouldn't have wanted to meet Shakespeare. I don't even know if, I don't really think that anyone could have even understood Shakespeare at a core level beyond Bacon. I don't really think, and that's, to me, is one of the biggest problems, is that you can talk about, well, yeah, De Vere was in Italy and De Vere wrote some stuff. I've looked at a few of De Vere's writings and I'm just like, okay, yeah, they're okay. But I mean, Bacon is like exuding like a completely higher level of beyond wisdom. There's a magnanimity or whatever, gravitas. There's a certain essence that just kind of like flows out of Bacon. I mean, even the dizzying, almost sci-fi nature of New Atlantis it's really on par with Shakespeare. It's otherworldly to an extent, and so the fact that these Oxfordians are saying, well, yeah, he knew Latin, he traveled. I mean, it's like, well, Bacon's mother knew Greek, Latin, Hebrew, and whatever else, and he was at Cambridge or whatever. He was at, I don't even remember what school he went to, but he was at Oxford or something at like age 13. And it's not like you have to be a snob, like, oh, like some Joe. Like I'm clearly like 100% not a Stratfordian. I mean, and I'm not saying that you couldn't have come up with that stuff. I'm not saying it couldn't have been done by a commoner from whatever, the suburbs. But I mean, you have to understand Bacon to even understand how powerful that, like, the language is. And you kind of can't understand Bacon and Shakespeare and assume that he wasn't involved. I that's just a bias that I have. Like, so I've never seen anything other than like, oh, there's a painting or there's this cipher or like De Vere went to Italy. I mean, really, it's just, I'm talking about the actual depth, the philosophical depth of the Shakespeare canon is, I I just don't get it from De Vere, and that doesn't mean he wasn't involved or he wasn't, he might have been an inspiration, like he may have. I think probably Bacon was hanging out with him. He was much older. I don't know exactly how much older, but then there's the fact that he died in I think 1605, and the idea that this club, that he had. So also, if you're an Oxfordian, you have to assume that all of the things were tightened up before the first folio. What was that? Was that? I can't even remember the actual. See, that's the thing. I don't have all these dates. I'm not that kind of expert. But if you're open minded and you're not judging me on that, then because I'm not saying that I'm not saying that Ben Jonson or a clique of authors couldn't have finished up the Shakespeare and then published it like 10 years later or something like that, somewhere in that range. I'm not saying that couldn't have happened, but nothing else really suggests that would be, for me, like that doesn't really seem like a problem. It's just not a thing that is, to me, it's not an issue, but it is an outlying incongruity, for the Oxfordians. The other thing is, I've never seen a single Oxfordian absolutely prove to me that Bacon himself couldn't have gone to Italy in 1782 or something. I mean, I read recently about there's allegedly a story where the reason Bacon goes to France in, I don't know when that was, maybe 85 or 1585, something like that. There's a legend that that Elizabeth says, like, she spills the beat, like she says, like, you're my son, or somehow it's discovered that Bacon finds out then that he's the son of Elizabeth, and she's like, well, you need to just go away for a while, and then the fact that Nicholas Bacon dies during that time is interesting. People have suggested that Hamlet was inspired by that death, but then again, I as someone who considers Dudley as potentially Bacon's biological father, like, I've looked into his death too, and I wonder how that might have played on Hamlet. So it's pretty complicated it's pretty hard to put yourself into Bacon's shoes, having two sets of parents, like, that's pretty crazy. And so at one point when it finally hit me that it's probably been about 2 years whenever I'm not exactly sure how it hit me, but I thought, because I haven't actually read all of Marlowe's works. I didn't read what's the last one, the Massacre at Paris or whatever, but I did notice that those characters they're similar characters in Love's Labour's Lost. I think like 2 or 3 of the characters are the same. So of course, in standard biographies of Marlowe, it says that he was dismissed from school absences. So Marlowe was somewhere, and I'm not trying to be weird by suggesting that Bacon was Marlowe first at all. Like, it's not something that I'm doing to be funny or cute or like trying to waste my time. Like, I'm actually trying to get a lot of stuff done on this planet. I have my own like goals, but the fact that I sort of want to talk to. I'd like to hear more from the Marlowe crowd, just to take. Let's say Marlowe was an actual person, and he did fake his death. you know, like what about Shakespeare and Marlowe are that similar? Because I have read them enough to say like there are at times a certain tenor, there is a certain tenor, there's a certain vibe that's similar, but I'm trying to get to this story arc, this entire thing, and it's very difficult for me to. Maybe I should have waited, but I'm doing this now, and I'm going to put it out there. But and try not to mumble and stutter too much. So I put myself in Bacon's shoes, to like insofar as I find out that I'm the son of Elizabeth, like I'm the prince, you know. I'm the Tudor prince, and I started looking at stuff like Tamburlaine, and just the number of times Prince comes up. I mean, it's a lot, but I mean, you can go to the Folger. I think there's like a Folger database where you know you can put in Prince, and there's like I don't know 1,200 variations, you know, instances of it, and I haven't looked at every single one of them, but in reading Tamburlaine, in reading Marlowe, from the perspective that this could be Bacon, with like a serious chip on his shoulder, the kind of like rebel rock star. It makes Marlowe what Marlowe does, what he writes, and everything he does. It gives it a certain motive, you know, because otherwise Marlowe is just some random like. I don't know, donkey farmer's son or whatever. I don't know. He's like what was Marlowe's dad supposed to be? I can't remember. Like something like a mailman's son or something. But I mean, the biography on Marlowe, as far as I can tell, is very, very minimal. And the fact that there's that royal kind of decree that like, oh, it's cool, he missed some school or whatever, Christchurch or whatever. I don't even know what it was, but. And like this whole thing with the Catholics, and I mean, Stratfordians seem to have absolutely no conception of the actual intensity of the spy game and everything that was going on. I've never seen any, and I don't want to waste time on the Stratfordians. I think it's a total waste, but. And then you have Anthony Bacon. So and you know he was in France for like 12 years, right? So there were many little things about that book about Golden Lads. I think that's what it was called, the Du Maurier book. That the amount of correspondences and definitely kind of espionage level stuff. Espionage law. I'm saying some. I feel like I sound like an idiot, but overall, I've just because I don't have the clearest. Sorry, we're gonna play Bach here now. We'll play Bach. But so I'm seeing this kind of rebel character, and maybe at that point, maybe this character Marlowe is actually an atheist. I don't know why he would have been pretending to be Catholic, you know, because they say like he's an atheist, or there was, you know, when he was, there were these very inflammatory, heretical papers that I can't remember his roommate. It wasn't Thomas Kidd. It was someone, but there was all that stuff going on, and eventually Marlowe gets into so much trouble that he's going to have to face trial. Okay, so for me, like, well, if that's Bacon, you know, just with this pseudonym, if Bacon's just pretending to be this Christopher Marlowe character, I mean, he's not going to go on trial, you know. So I mean, that really suggests the fake death, which I mean, really the whole Deptford thing. I mean, it's so shady. I mean, there really is no reason to believe that story at all. I don't think, but. I'm saying that, and I know there are a couple of people. There is a very small. I'm not even sure that I read from anyone else that. I think I came to the Bacon was Marlowe and Shakespeare conclusion on my own, but Dodd I think got me there, and there are probably other people that I just don't remember sequentially that I that I read that somewhere else first. Like I really think that was a conclusion that kind of made sense when you look at how conspicuously separate, and there's no overlap, and basically Shakespeare, you'd have to believe that Shakespeare was doing almost nothing, like acting, for like the entirety of the 1580s. And then, I mean, you can get into John Dee. I remember probably 5 years ago, I was looking at a chart, and someone had, through diary entries or correspondences, they made a chart with Bacon and Dee and not even sure who else is on there. I mean, it would make sense. They could say Shakespeare, but I mean, there's really not much information on Shakespeare, I don't think, in the 80s, in the 1580s. And then we're going to get into the books and the ledgers and all that paperwork, that paper trail in Stratford. But I don't want to spend too much time on that, because that is definitely something that I can't do anything about that. There's no way I don't have that giant book of who was born when. I said, there's one guy, I don't know if he probably will never see this, but he's got like this Roman name, like Caius Regulus. I hate to even mention his name, but he was really adamant that I was a fool for thinking that Bacon and some royal, some like high level people would have been able to cook the books, I said. And that might be a stretch. I'm not saying that I have forensic proof that those pages are faked, or that there's any. I really don't know, but for me, there's so many other factors that I can just overlook. I'm able to just overlook that paper trail thing, and it doesn't bother me too much. And so if there is an overlap, or if Shakespeare was thought to have works, let's say there was a record of a Shakespeare play being written before Marlowe's death. I mean, again, that is, I think some of that could be backdated. Or, on the other hand, I think that people would have Bacon, let's just say Bacon, and maybe his closest friends would have said, like, it's time to shift gears. Like, you're gonna, maybe it's time to, like, create a new character, because, this is not going to go well. You're in too deep, and you're not going to, this Marlowe guy got a little too hot. It's a little too hot there, and you might already be thinking about killing him off in 93, at some point, 1593. It might be a thing. Again, I don't have all of this, but I'm kind of, like I said, shooting from the hip. So then to me, this is a really interesting part of it. And there's probably many details that maybe I'm overlooking, and I'm not really trying to make this story right, but like, I'm not necessarily trying to just make it fit so that I can be right about it, but I've thought about what it would mean to revolutionize, to become a different person, to go from Marlowe to Shakespeare, and what that might involve. And that might involve different people. It might just involve a brutal realization that, like, if you want to keep doing this and you can't you can't be Marlowe anymore, you're going to have to change some stuff up radically. And that might even be at some initiatory level, like I've imagined, Bacon having like a sort of ritual ego death, or like a ritual almost like a hazing, or some kind of like mystical rite, where the Marlowe has to die, and whatever transition, whatever it is that, because this is a person, whoever made Shakespeare, they have a right to have grown. They have a right to have had an early period. Of course, people talk about, well, Titus Andronicus was a was it him or like like Taming the Shrew isn't that good or whatever, and like he didn't really get his stride until, you know, 1600. Like that's when the really good stuff happened. So you already have a growth period. If you just, even if you're a Stratfordian, you can say like, well, he wasn't that great, but so how much better is like prime, you know, Shakespeare's best compared to Marlowe? And you could say that there would have been a lot of growth there, and Marlowe didn't really write any comedies. So again, that's another opportunity to rebrand. So if Bacon realizes, you know, he's still got a lot of plays to write, you know, and sure, he likely did have a lot of help. I mean, I'm not ruling that out whatsoever, but I'll just repeat it, like the overall stamp, the essence, especially if he is a tutor, you know, all of the histories become much more. They become. It just makes more sense that, I mean, this guy not only was an insider, but he was like royalty himself, and so all of the obsession with that could be attributed to Bacon being the son of Elizabeth. So yeah, so that was like the main thrust of, I just wanted to get that off of my chest. And there are many things that linger for me, like the just the intro or the dedication in the poems in Venus and Adonis and Rape of Lucrece. I don't even know how to say it, Rape of Lucrece. But the sort of I don't want to say convoluted, but there's a I'm failing here, but it reminds me of, there's the dedication in, it's either the Advancement of Learning or Novum Organum, I can't remember it, but it's to King James. And I mean, I've read that intro to be where he seems to almost admit, if you're looking at it like Bacon is the son of Elizabeth, he does almost seem to admit, and that's the one thing I really wanted to read, but I just didn't write it down. I don't have it in paper form, so I would actually had to print it or type it or to write it down by hand. And but you have to be pretty. It requires a similar level of understanding and comprehension, I think. A very similar level of comprehension with Bacon and Shakespeare. But I forget what else I was going to say. Something about shit. Totally blanking out now. I had a thought, and I can't pause this. I don't think I could pause it, maybe. So this is just dead air. But yeah, I'm still waiting for an Oxfordian to give me something real. I mean, to go back to the Dee thing, like Dee, where was Dee in the 1580s? And let's say Bacon's the son of Elizabeth, right? And maybe he wants to check in on little Francis and be like, so your son, like, and at some point it was probably still a secret, maybe. But I could see those two hanging out. Oh, yeah, I know what I was going to bring up earlier. Yeah, Dee kind of led me back into it. But, you know, Prospero, the kind of wizard. You've got Faustus, and you've got Mephistopheles, who's like a demon or whatever. And I'm certainly not the first person that brought up the similarity between Ariel and Mephistopheles, but the sort of intimacy, the almost like real firsthand knowledge of this relationship. I mean, Faustus to me is kind of camp, but the actual like existential angst of Faustus I definitely feel, but Mephistopheles is kind of a little jerk, and I really do think that Bacon had like a massive change of heart. I think he, and again, I might be totally insane or off the mark here. I would love to be proven definitively wrong that or someone just tell me that there's no way any of this is possible. But there really had to be a radical change from Bacon really had to have a like serious chip on his shoulder to write Tamburlaine. Whoever wrote Tamburlaine was like they were on a trip. I mean, they were on like why who writes that, And I'm seeing someone as like very kind of like very I don't even know if it's pissed off, but they're like, oh yeah, well, check this shit out, like imagine putting on Tamburlaine and imagine seeing it, if you're Elizabeth, you know what I mean? Like the play's the thing. Imagine like I would suggest read Tamburlaine as if Bacon wrote it and he's the son of Elizabeth, because that's some like wow, that's powerful in that sense. And I'm not saying that Marlowe wasn't just a dude who like felt like doing that, but I mean, it seems kind of absurd to pin everything on Bacon, but then again, it really would make sense, I think, for someone of Bacon's temperament. I mean, there's plenty in Shakespeare that is blood or fire or piss and vinegar or whatever. There's funny, there's cute moments, but I mean, it still has a violent power, just exploring power and just being that much of an insider, with and knowing, other people would know that. I'm not sure who all would have known. Plenty of people would have known who he was, but it also would have been kind of easy to cover up to an extent. There may be letters here or there, but I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, Elizabeth kept it pretty tight. I think things were pretty tight. So in terms of enemies, why didn't, I don't know enough about Coke. I did read a kind of standard Bacon biography, and I don't even remember when exactly his falling out with Coke was, but I do believe it was, I think it would have made sense for The Tempest to reflect that with sort of shenanigans. I feel bad again because I can't even remember who's who in that, like who, like the Duke of Milan, or I can't remember who's who, but I get the whole premise is this, like, Prospero's been kind of screwed over, and he's showing how magnanimous he is. And then there's that line about, like, only princes can show mercy. I don't know what that's in, but yeah, the way Prince is used over and over is
even in Bacon's essay on masks and triumphs, he's like, generally these are not something you should really give too much care to, but it's not such a big deal. But since princes will have these, it's like, really? Like, I mean, why put that line in there? I mean, like, to me, that's just some tongue-in-cheek stuff. I things like that, there's no scientific way to say, like, oh no, it meant nothing. You can't scientifically say, like, oh yeah, Bacon just put Prince in there because it was just random. And this happens, you have to, like, take all of it, and you just kind of stew in this, there's just this, sometimes it's bitter, sometimes it's like, it was with Marlowe, of course, to me, that shift, the difference between Marlowe and Shakespeare is like, it's something that could happen to one person. One person could change their style and completely change their attitude if that's what it was, if that was necessary to keep going, So imagine whoever wrote, let's just say someone in 1885, or sorry, 1585, doesn't know about, like, whatever, the great works, Hamlet, Macbeth, King Lear, and all that stuff. Hasn't happened yet. It's going to. And what I'm saying is, whoever wrote it, the depth of it can handle a growth period. It basically requires that. I mean, you could be great and precocious and you'd be brilliant, but demand and necessity and sort of life and death kind of pressure. I feel like a certain amount of pressure cook that down, and maybe De Vere was there helping him, or maybe De Vere was, who knows? I mean, I don't see any reason to think Marlowe was an actual person. So it's also possible that Marlowe was someone else other than Bacon, and then Bacon came in, but that doesn't really, it doesn't really describe where Bacon was, in those years. And please, if anyone watches this and you want to tell me, like, specifically that Bacon was, like, at Gray's Inn or whatever, and he was just, like, doing legal shit all the time, and he didn't dip out for, like, 4 months or whatever, that's fine. But didn't it even have, like, a printing press or something? Like, they were was like a scrivener or something like that. I think Anthony and Francis were, like, I think they were cranking out stuff. I think they were cranking out all the shit they liked, like Ovid or Seneca. See, I just started reading Seneca recently, and I actually I knew that there was Seneca in, it's been a while since I looked at Bacon's, like, little Browns here. I feel like there's a lot of Seneca around at the time, and Seneca's aphorisms are pretty awesome. I mean, his like, I just watched a YouTube thing and it was like, wow, these are pretty much, like, as good advice as anything you'll find in the Bible. It's as good as Proverbs. And I mean, I know Jesus had a certain there was a certain almost insane that God element that Jesus had, I do appreciate it, but the stoic, the sort of philosopher, statesman, whatever that Seneca is, I find to be on par at a practical level. But so I was looking at my complete works, and I was like, I'm just going to read Titus Andronicus. I'd never read it, and I think I saw the film, the Anthony Hopkins and Julie Taymor or whatever, and I didn't necessarily like it that much. It was a while ago. I was probably just distracted, but I think I found out like the next day that Seneca had written this. I think Phaedra or whatever it's called has a similar situation with cannibalism or something like that, and I was like, okay, I mean that doesn't mean anything necessarily, but the fact that people just dismiss Bacon as like, well, he didn't write poetry, like he was like, read his philosophical stuff. Yeah, like no shit. Yeah, it's not a play. Like it's like water boils and I mean, it's like pre-Newtonian. It's like pre-scientific method. I get that, but I mean, thinking that this guy was just sitting around being a lawyer and then just was like that much of a philosopher, and to not think that someone like Seneca, who was obviously philosophically, let's say, gifted, and wrote plays that basically are philosophical treatises. Now, whether or not nobility should have been doing plays, because on one hand, it's like, we're not talking about like a Michael Bay film or like Seth Rogen. I can't even believe I said his name, but yeah, like there's like philosophy and sort of the play is the thing. I mean, it seems absurd to think that very brilliant ideas and deep, like moral, ethical, transcendentally awkward and meaningful things weren't in aspects of theater, going back to to Greece or whatever. So I think there was a range of, it would have been idiotic to have just like only gestures, and you can think of how goofy like that, like think of how stupid like the average person would be who would want to see like just a silly TV show type thing, So I mean, I don't even understand how any even slightly above average person would have even been able to comprehend Shakespeare in a lot of ways. So I don't really think it was that much of a populist thing. And so there's no reason to think that Bacon wasn't, again, going back to that, his thing with the masks and triumphs. I mean, it's absurd to think that a lot of the Shakespeare plays are dealing with the exact topics that are in Bacon's essays, and like he was probably just trying to imitate Montaigne, or not imitate, but to expand. I've never read Montaigne actually at all, but Montaigne, I don't know, I guess. But it's just a horrible argument, I think, to suggest that Bacon should be not a suspect in this because none of his stuff is poetical or whatever. I mean, that to me is like, that's totally absurd. Well, I've rambled enough. I'm sure at one point I will wish that I could go back and edit this, and but I think for now I'm going to stop for now because, yeah, Bacon, potentially son of Elizabeth, goes out there and has he's like very inspired by this situation, and he's got a huge ego, and he's like, I'm gonna write the most badass stuff. I'm gonna be Marlowe, and things get a little dicey. There's a lot of spy wars going on. I don't think Bacon was necessarily 100% like, I don't know if he cared that much about the Catholic versus Protestant battle. I think he was too far beyond that. It was probably petty to him, and he was, even if he dug King Solomon and stuff, I don't think he was so invested in Christianity to not be Marlowe, like he could have had that phase, is what I'm saying. I mean, like, plenty of people have that phase where they're like, goth kids, or like, they're rebelling, so you can do that for a while, but yeah. So I'm trying to rein in my thesis, which is I'm just not convinced that this is that crazy. There's enough to make me think that it's as plausible. I mean, certainly as plausible as really any other thing, any other theory. I'm just not convinced that De Vere ever had the I just don't know if his writings were ever that good. He might have been a pirate and like wrote some stuff, but I don't know. So, and probably was a good, might have been an influence on Bacon, but yeah, I've laid it out there. Anyway, this is a good symphony. I like Brahms. I didn't used to like Brahms at all. I thought he was, a little side note here. I think I might have tried listening to Brahms, and I thought it was the most just old-fashioned. It just seemed, I didn't get it at all. I would have been listening to a lot of Wagner, Bartok string quartets, Shostakovich even, Strauss, Debussy. And I just thought this was old-fashioned in a way that wasn't even cool like Bach, or, I mean, really everyone I preferred. Haydn, Mozart. I just thought they were, all had more to offer than Brahms. But I just didn't get around to these for a long time. But now I've been converted. But, all right, I gotta stop. I'm just rambling now. And I know this probably no one will watch this, but I'm gonna try to tag the heck out of it. And I welcome any critique. I'm sure it's gonna be easy to, like, it's gonna be very easy to shoot holes in this whole thing, because I've just been up here with no hard evidence, very little, like almost nothing, but yeah, I'm open-minded enough to please tell me more, like, help me learn more about this. And the thing that I was thinking about earlier was, again, it's like it's difficult to not obsess over this because the mystery is still there, and we're still talking about, like, the greatest, English author of all time. If not, I mean, I don't know if there's anyone in any language that has had this much impact. I don't even know if it's possible. So to not be curious about it, to me, is, I think that's almost crazy, and to be a Stratfordian is just completely insane. So yeah, here I am, like a Baconian who's daring to suggest that Marlowe was also bacon. I don't know. I guess I'll probably never know. Yeah. But anyway, I will have, eventually I think I will have a lot more details, just citing that intro to that one bacon intro. I mean, there's so many things, like there's so many instances where the way Prince is used, it's not just that it's Prince, but it has this like sting in the tail. It has this like, oh yeah, like, okay, yeah, you're the Prince, I get it. Many of them, and I should make a list of them. The other thing I like is the crap. I can't remember any of these characters' names. I think I have like early onset Alzheimer's or something. But that the bastard speech in King Lear is. You don't need to be a bastard to write that speech, but dang, if you are one, then and it really gets in there in a way that no doubt whoever wrote that put himself into many shoes. It was like someone that could relate to all walks of life, but because I look at it that way, it really resonates. Like, just because you're married, think of how many times I just roll over and we did the sex, really addressing the potential cooling off of a marriage. And like, imagine, he has almost like a loathing for got me thinking about sort of like spiritual energy that can be present and built or infused into a child conception. And that's kind of what I got from that passage, is that maybe the marriage is so stale that it affects the child beyond the genetics, that there's an energetic quality. And so then I would infer that the writer, if Bacon, is also saying that part of the reason he's so fucking awesome is that Elizabeth and Dudley were like the best sex ever or something, like in his mind maybe. All right, I gotta stop. Thank you for listening. If anyone will ever listen to this or watch this, it's been fun. I really kind of wish I'd have done this earlier in the day, because I would have been much more sharp, I think. But maybe I needed all those pauses and gnawing and spending 30... Okay, I'm done.